Uh-oh, it sounds like I'm middle-aged. I think it's possible I may have hit middle age. Well, Father, I hope you have a great show tonight. I hope it's wonderful.
Bye.
Good night.
Glory to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit.
This is Orthodoxy Live with Father Evan Armatas, a live interactive call-in program where your questions about the Orthodox faith are addressed. Father Evan is the priest at St. Spiridon Greek Orthodox Church in Loveland, Colorado. Call in your question at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Here now is Father Evan.
Good evening and welcome to Orthodoxy Live, your live call-in show about the Orthodox faith, her teachings, and her traditions. I'm your host, Father Evan, and we're streaming to you live here on Ancient Faith Radio. I'm glad you're with us this evening. We look forward to taking your calls tonight, and you can reach us, as our announcer said, at 1-855-AF-RADIO, or that's 1-855-237-2346. You can also get to us at ancientfaith.com. There, look for the live radio button. Scroll down to Orthodoxy Live and you'll find a microphone button. You can click there and record a question while we're on air, and even when we're off air if you've got a question that comes to you. Of course, you can also send in your question to Orthodoxy Live at ancientfaith.com anytime. And of course, we love hearing from you live. And as we open the show, we've got a few lines open. Again, the number to call, 1-855-237-2346. If you can't remember any of that, of course, you can hit us up in our chat room. You can get to us at askask@ancientfaith.com. We love to hear from you and love to hear your questions. It is August 2nd, 2020, and as our parishioners came into church this morning at St. Spiridon's, they saw that we had changed out the liturgical colors to blue, as we do each year, entering into the fast of the Dormition. You know, many people are confused by this fast, sometimes called Small Lent, which ends with the feast of our Lord's Mother's falling asleep. That's what Dormition means. And one of the topics I cover in the new book that Ancient Faith is publishing will be out right around September 1st. I just saw the final jacket cover, and the book is called Spiritual Toolkit, A Practical Guide to Prayer, Fasting, and Almsgiving. I try in the book to answer the typical questions I receive from my own parishioners in a very conversational and approachable way, to answer their most basic and even complicated questions as to why do I pray? How do I pray? What do I do when I pray? Fasting, for example, what is this Small Lent? What time period is it in? What about the other seasons of Lent and different types of fasting? And really, what is almsgiving? What does love for the other look like? And how do I incorporate all those disciplines into my life? And so that book will be out soon, and I hope you'll check it out. This morning, or I should say this evening, as we get into our program, one of the things that I want to make sure and mention to all of you is, look, there's a ton going on each and every day in our world and certainly in our faith. And one of the ways that we can bring the light of Christ to those that have not heard the gospel and are in need is through a ministry that I've been associated with for almost 2 decades, Project Mexico. It's a ministry that I know Ancient Faith talks about a lot. I'm mentioning it tonight because I want everybody who's listening to take a second, Google Project Mexico or the St. Innocent Orphanage in Rosarita, Mexico. Take a look at their ministry, and here's why. Each year, this ministry during the summer builds homes for families in need. So teams from around the U.S. and outside descend down to Rosarita and build homes, dozens of homes built. And these homes support families that otherwise would go homeless or live in really dire circumstances. On top of that, those teams bring much needed income to that ministry of St. Innocent and Project Mexico to care for the children that are educated and formed at the orphanage. This year, because of COVID and the border closing, those teams are not going to Project Mexico, and they've reached a funding crisis that they've never seen before. So I'm just appealing to you, if you're listening to this program or sharing this program with others, take a look at that ministry. They're well worth supporting, and I hope that you'll take a moment and send them whatever you can in your local parish. Perhaps you can even design a fundraiser. All the month of August, our parish is going to be collecting funds to support that ministry, along with the other things that we're doing, like our feeding program in Ecuador or Kenya, our support of the local community kitchen, and whatnot. Anyway, God's blessings be with all of you as we get underway. It's August 2nd, 2020. We're streaming to you live here in Ancient Faith. I hope you are enjoying the program thus far. And if you've got a question, feel free to dial in at 1-855-237-2346. We're going to go out to our first caller tonight. Mike, welcome to the program.
Hi, Father Evan. It's great to talk to you.
Well, great to have you on air. Where are you calling from, Mike?
I'm calling from Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Well, I don't know if you know this, but Pennsylvania has the rather incredible fact that it has the most Orthodox churches of any state in the Union. So,
Really?
yeah, there's so many Orthodox churches in that state, just dotting the almost every city. But something I learned in my travels and in my time speaking with clergy from the area. But what area of Pennsylvania are you in?
I'm in central Pennsylvania near the capital of Harrisburg.
Wonderful, beautiful part of the country.
Yeah, and I'm new to Orthodoxy, so I was very happy to find a church close by that I could start going to. So
wonderful. And how did you find the church? How did you come across that?
it was actually through a radio show host, Hank Hanegraaff, had converted to Orthodoxy, and I had listened to him for years and hadn't listened to him for a long time. Happened to turn him on right around the start of this whole COVID thing, and heard that he converted to Orthodoxy. I didn't know that, and I was like, "What is this?"
What? So yeah, what's Orthodoxy?
Kind of led me down all kinds of listening to lots and lots of podcasts, and then finally visiting a church for a few services. Now that it's starting to open up a little bit, I finally went to liturgy just last week. But so the question is that I really finding that I think that for me that this is the right path. And I'm finding that I really love the theology of church and learning so much. But my family, we've gone to a Pentecostal church and my wife and sons go to church, and they're not as interested as I am. They're not supportive of me. They are supportive of what I'm doing, but they may not necessarily follow me, so to speak. Right. So I find myself kind of in between these two different places, and I just wondered if you have some advice because I look at it, I kind of see myself as possibly going every other Sunday to do liturgy, and then every other Sunday with my family. Or maybe trying to do liturgy service in the morning, and then
head over to the other church.
Doing that kind of thing, and so I just I didn't know if you had some. Also, all the songs I know are Protestant worship songs. A lot of them I really love and know, but I don't know any like worship music from the Orthodox Church or things like this. I've been trying to do prayers and all the things I can. But anyways, I'll let you talk, but any advice for my situation would be great.
You bet, Mike. Well, I appreciate you calling, and just to identify with your question today, new friends of mine, Chris and Greg, come from the Reformed tradition, began visiting recently our parish. Their son and daughter-in-law and children became Orthodox. And just about 7 months ago, for the first time, they had heard of Orthodoxy, began their study really with some skeptical feelings about what their son was doing, uncertainty as to whether or not he was any longer following Christ and the gospel, but had perhaps been caught up in some cult or heretical sect, and have gone through the journey and now find themselves in a similar boat. Just this week, a dear friend who has been joining us for Bible study online. We've been broadcasting live our Bible study on Tuesdays, and anybody can join that. It's also on our beloved Ancient Faith Radio as a podcast known as Transforming Our Lives in Christ. And a pastor in the Midwest, reached out and said, I'm on this same journey, finding orthodoxy, falling in love with the church and her teachings and her life. And but this is a disruption. It's a disruption to my life. And we know that this is true because Christ himself says so. He alludes to the fact that those who follow him will pay a price. He
Right.
paints it in rather stark terms. They'll lose father and mother, brother and sister. And he says it in a very, dramatic way. He who loves father, mother, brother, sister more than me is not worthy of me. And so, he demands this pursuit, this absolute love for him. But then, to those who encounter this journey and notice the loss and the cost and the price, he also assures them, that both in this life and the next, they will receive not only what they had, but more. It's sort of like the story of Job, isn't it? I say this to you only because I think standing where you are and many others whom I've talked with, it's scary. It's terrifying. You kind of get to a place where you realize, I have to go forward into this, but I also can't go back. And I'm not sure what it'll look like if I go forward, but I can't stay where I am. Right. So, and then others around you they're scared. They're thinking, what's happened to Mike? Did he lose the gospel? Has he lost his mind? Is he off on a wild goose chase? Has he been enamored by some sectarian concept? And so, I'm just painting the picture, right? And
Yeah.
And so these are things you're probably familiar with, and you've come to this, at a time where you're married, your life's in motion, right? How many children do you have?
I have two teenage sons.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
like I say, they're very supportive and understanding.
Right. Not interested, Dad.
And but it's still, it's
Yeah. I mean,
different for them.
Totally. I mean, I've encountered this again and again where, again, your life's in motion. It's not as if your children haven't been living a life of faith. They're probably very connected, to a community, right. and same with your wife. And fortunately, it doesn't sound like anybody's in opposition, but they're just not interested in joining, right?
Right.
But either way, let me tell you, I think if we stop for a moment and say, all right, Mike, let's strip it all away, the interest in the theology, perhaps the wonder at liturgical worship, the surprise that you feel by the beauty of the church, and all of it, right? The history, if we strip all that away, let's see if we can get to the core of why have you made this choice? Why are you pursuing this?
I think it's true. I think it'd be true, and that's where I'm at. I feel like it's kind of like I can't. If it is true, then I can't sort of pretend that I don't know that.
Okay.
And if it is what's right, then I feel compelled to go in that direction.
Okay.
And I have noticed in my own life, I feel like I'm making strides, in my growth in Christ more.
Okay. So
you a little bit I've gotten so far.
Right. You just basically made the 2 points that I would hope someone in your shoes would make. You're pursuing it because it's truth, and you're pursuing it because the truth sets us free. It transforms us. It changes us. Right? And this is all you need to do. The rest you commend to God. Time and again, people in your shoes who have pursued Christ, and for any other reason, I would tell you, entering the church is nonsensical. You know, don't enter the church because it's historical. Don't enter the church because it's got pretty icons. Don't enter the church for Christ. Enter the church because this body is Christ's body, and in its arms, you come to live a life in Christ richer and deeper and fuller than you've ever experienced, and you change. This will be the way and the means by which your wife and your children will come to appreciate, perhaps honor, and perhaps someday join you. Otherwise, it's just smoke and mirrors. Oh, Dad's interested in that. That's cool. That's neat. But if you change, it creates, if you will, a beautiful tension between who you were and who you are. And that tension was created by the change in you. And that change is what they'll have to contend with. And, you know, you're not doing it to put if you will, a new thing in front of them. You're doing it because you're pursuing Christ. But that pursuit leads to something. And you know what? I say to my book, whether they know it or not, that's what they want. And if they see it, then they have a way. It's just the same thing Christ said to Thomas. You know, and Thomas said, we don't know the way. And he said, what do you mean, Thomas? I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. You show them Christ in you, and they in like manner will want to know what's going on, Dad. And that's where the conversation will open up. Okay?
Okay. Yeah. Do you think it's okay that I still join them in worship?
I think it's an act of love.
That are pretty sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I feel like instead of being critical of the services, I'm starting to learn how to appreciate
yes.
what's good in them.
Yeah. And find a way to build a bridge. Yeah.
Right.
You know, every situation is different, and the church doesn't respond to each situation with one rule. You know, in some circumstances, I might say, Mike, no. You've entered the church, remain always in the church. But in your situation, I think it's an act of love to continue to be with your wife and your children. I mean, what are you going to do? Separate yourself from them? That would be painful. I don't think that makes sense. So,
okay.
Thanks for calling, Mike. It's great to have you on air.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
You bet. Talk to you later. Again, you're listening to Orthodoxy Live here on Ancient Faith Radio. As Mike drops off, that'll open a line for you at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-Radio. It's August 2nd, 2020, and we're streaming to you live. Here's a question that came into us while we're on air on YouTube. Ioannis wants to know, should one speak to one's priest before starting a ministry? Ioannis, you're asking a big question. I think it depends, you know, on how we view church. And I have a view that I don't think is incorrect or liberal or expansive. I just think it is the view of the church. You know, Christ came to earth and he developed ministry alongside of and with his disciples and said to them, you know, greater things than I've done, you will do. He had no desire to control, micromanage, or oversee every tidbit of ministry they did. In fact, he even tests them out. He sends them out and has them try ministry on their own, and then reconvenes the group of the apostles and works with them. In a similar way, our parishes should be places of innovation, of commitment, of engagement. We shouldn't proxy any ministry to some specialized group. Ministry shouldn't be seen as a specialist's role, but rather by virtue of our baptism, each of us is a member of the body and part of the royal priesthood. Now, priests often can feel a great deal of risk when it comes to ministry creation and ministry organization, and so they'll exert a fair amount of control. And, when the risk goes up, they may exert more control, and then the risk goes down. And the danger of that is that as they exert more and more control over one's ministry or the ministry of the parish and who's doing what, the desire to be involved and engaged, to create, to innovate goes away. Now, the only way I can speak to leadership within the church, including priests and lay leadership, in getting the right balance is to say, look, we've got to reduce control. We've got to increase the amount of risk, and we do that through explaining and growing in the vision of the gospel. So if the vision of the gospel is understood within the parish, the life of the community, then ministry naturally just develops without sort of the top-down approach. Now, I think it's beneficial to speak to our priests. In my parish, the way that we've set things up is that the ministries of the parish are under the pastoral office. The administrative tasks are under the council. So theoretically, ministries are under my role as a priest. But when we say under, we have the idea of servant leadership in the church. And so I don't try to exert a great deal of control, but I try to help develop leadership and then allow leadership and the natural inclination we all have to serve God and serve one another to flourish. And that generally happens when we increase the vision of the people of God and we allow them to activate and use their talents. In parishes where, again, risk is we're risk adverse, then that's hard for that to happen. So, Ioannis, your question, should I speak to my priest about starting a ministry? Depends on the life of that parish, but I think in general, you probably need to at least visit, understand your parish priest's comfort level, and then go from there. And if it's a place where the priest feels he must be in control of all aspects of ministry, perhaps a healthy conversation about how we can transform what I call a daddy model parish into an empowered or engaged model parish is needed. And I've got a whole host of talks and YouTube videos on that. If you just look up Father Evan Armatas, Reclaiming the Great Commission, it's a 4-part YouTube series on parish health, parish management, and leadership. Thanks for the question, Ioannis. It's a great one. We're going to go back out to the phones again. You're listening to Orthodoxy Live, and we've got a couple of open lines. If you'd like to call in at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF Radio. Mary, welcome to the program.
Thank you for taking my call.
Well, it's nice to have you on the program, Mary. Where are you calling from?
Ohio.
Okay. Where in Ohio are you calling from?
Dayton.
Dayton. So I had a sweatshirt. Is there the University of Dayton or Dayton? What is that? Is there a university in Dayton, Ohio?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What's it called?
That's what it's called.
Dayton University, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, this is going back 30 plus years, but I have no idea how I had the sweatshirt, but I had a sweatshirt of Dayton University. What's the mascot?
You know what? I didn't
Don't even know.
There, so yeah.
The Flyers. Oh, someone knows. John jumped in there, our producer, and says it's the Flyers.
Toledo's Rockets.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I have to tell you, I have no idea how I ended up with this sweatshirt, but it's something that I guess I've never forgotten. And so, where in looking at Ohio, where is Dayton?
It's about half an hour north or so of Cincinnati.
Of Cincinnati, okay, so a little bit south. In terms of where in Ohio, my last trip to Ohio was in Columbus. I was there in February, beginning of February, right before everything locked down. So anyway, well, Mary's first time calling in?
No,
you've called before. Well, tell me your question. What's on your mind?
Well, I was listening to your advice for Mike and keeping in mind that he is married with kids. Mm-hmm. I guess I need clarification. My son, I'm born and raised Greek Orthodox, and my children too. And my son is contemplating getting engaged to a young lady, a nice young lady who's Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
And I'm not pressuring him. Of course, I am biased, but I'm not pressuring him. My thing is if you're going to get married, they should be at the same church.
Mm-hmm.
And I did give him the spiel too, like what you said is once you know what's right in your heart, it's hard to go back. Because he wants to stay Orthodox, but get married in the Catholic Church and raise the kids Catholic. And I said, how, if the kids if they go to catechism, and they come home and say, oh, guess what? Now that I can take Holy Communion, I can take the wafer, but I don't have to drink the wine. I don't have to have the blood, and that's not right, in your heart. And because they used to go to a Catholic school, and my kids, and they know that's not right. And so different things like that. What are you going to say? How are you going to support that? And so I just feel that they should be in union. But what I can't remember offhand. I'm sorry. I should have written it down. Something that you said to Mike that I might have misappropriated about being, love God more than your mother, brother. Your friend.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's appropriate in this case. So I just need a clarification. How to
Sure. I think one of the challenges that you are facing is your situation is pastoral first. It's of course theological, but it's pastoral first. Your son is falling in love, right? And if you come at your son with a theological answer to a pastoral problem, there's going to be a disconnect. It's sort of like in my parish, people have been challenged by the political setting that we're in and the differences that people have around the virus and mask wearing. And to those who are feeling like wearing a mask is somehow for them unappealing or offensive or a incorrect medical decision or whatever it might be, I don't approach a question like that with a sort of dogmatic explanation of science. That's not why they're bringing up their concerns. Their concerns in the world that I live in is a pastoral concern. And so I have to address it as such. Your son's movement towards engagement and perhaps marrying a girl, a wonderful young lady who's not Orthodox, that's a pastoral situation. So you've got to approach it as such. That's the first thing I would say to you. Okay? Secondary to that, if your son knows that your first and primary concern is the success of his marriage and his relationship, then you can move on to, son, let's talk about how you're going to live your faith in your marriage. How's this going to work? How will your home be united? Now, in some situations, you're the last person that should have that conversation. Right? I mean, we know this as parents. Sometimes we have to be a little more cagey and step back and say, this is not a conversation my son can have with me. And I need to find a good resource for him. I've seen situations where the girl's priest and the husband, the man's priest, the woman's priest, the man's priest have sat down with a couple. One's Protestant, one's Catholic, one's Orthodox, and they have a frank conversation. I would say if they're, considering being Orthodox or considering being Roman Catholic, I think both priests would say it's best to be of one faith and not have confusion in the home about where one attends and what church one participates in. So that might be a way to go forward is just to talk to them about seeking advice and counsel. And I don't know if they're open to those conversations. You would know better. The thing that I was mentioning to Mike is that, the gospel demands allegiance beyond earthly concern is really what Christ is saying. In earthly relationships, our first relationship is with Christ. And he wants us to consider our faith with him first. Mm-hmm. And to a degree, that's really what you're also asking, is you're saying, son, is Christ first? And, he may answer, Mom, I don't see what the big deal is if my wife's Catholic and I'm Orthodox, same God, it's the same, we're still leading our children in faith and love of God, and it's okay, right? And technically speaking, the Roman Catholic Church recognizes Orthodox sacraments as valid. So if they got married in the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church would say, hey, it's a valid marriage. Unfortunately, Orthodoxy doesn't look at it the same way. We don't look at marriage outside of the church as a sacrament that allows an Orthodox Christian to still be in good standing with the church. But again, these are theological questions, and I think these are second and third questions because you first have to settle the pastoral. Your son's in love, and he's thinking of starting a life with this woman, and you need to come alongside that idea and show your support and your love for him and for her, and provide a safe place for him to explore this question, and for you to be nonpartisan. I mean, I try to be nonpartisan as well when I meet with couples. I tell them, my job is not to make one of you Orthodox, but my job is to answer questions and help you see a clear path forward and understand the choices you're making. I don't know if I'm helping you, Mary. It's a tough.
No, thinking, and forgive me listening to this later in the yard. I'm going him to listen to this, and because I think he's afraid to go talk to our priest, and which is why he approached me. And I think maybe if he hears this from you, and then when this podcast is archived, that maybe this will help. That okay, now he's talked to Mom, and Mom's still not sure how to
help him.
Yeah, that if he hears this from you, that. He's working right now, otherwise he can't listen. Yeah. But maybe this will help because I try to be as neutral as I could, and I just told him, because I believe that I've seen so many places where they've had mixed marriages, denomination-wise, and they go to one church one week, another church the other week.
Confusing.
And they end up
it's hard.
Confused and not feeling like they belong anywhere.
And so,
and I think it works in the marriage too.
Yeah. I mean, you're concerned. That's why I say it's pastoral. It's for the person. And again, when I become non-partisan, non-parochial, and I say to the couple, look, I'm here to help you find a place of true communion with one another, and the biggest part of that is agreement on the most inner part of yourself, which is one's life in Christ. Then, we move away from polemics. And, it's not about winning here. It's not about, they became Orthodox, I won. Oh, they became Catholic, lost. But it is about, learning. I mean, you want to get married, then you better be ready for the adult decisions. These are big decisions. Marriage is not easy. And we want every opportunity to build common values and beliefs to strengthen your marriage. And, you might want to also suggest, I do really like the work of John Gottman. He has some things to say. He's not a Christian, but he's got some wonderful resources for marriage. You can look up the Gottman Institute out of the University of Washington, and he talks about elements of faith. He understands its centrality and importance. He's a pious Jew, And he understands how couples need to be united in this. And he also understands how to work out the differences that exist in marriages on this issue. So they need to know that work. As I tell people, you can't go into a marriage without the tools that you need to build a solid foundation. Don't be, as you know, and as I know after, over 2 decades of marriage is a very difficult, wonderful, and technical journey. It's like getting up Everest. You don't just set out without the right equipment. You'll die on the mountain, trust me. And as long as you go in with this conversation and some honesty and the willingness, if you're so in love, I also tell young couples, if you're so in love and you want to get married, then do the work to make sure it will last. And so have this conversation, bring in some people that can help, whether it's your parish priest or someone in the area that you feel comfortable with that knows what they're talking about. It helps. It'll pay back in dividends. So, Mary, thanks for calling and for sharing that very important question. Okay.
And thank you for helping me clarify that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mary.
Have a good one. You
too. Well, we've got about 25 minutes left in the program. You're listening to Orthodoxy Live here in Ancient Faith. The number to call is 1-855-237-2346. We're going to take a short break. We do have open lines, and we look forward to talking to you in just a minute.
Father Evan will be back in a moment. In the meantime, lines are open at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346.
A wonderful new tool for Orthodox children. A Child's Guide to the Divine Liturgy is designed as an aid to help children negotiate their way through the Divine Liturgy and learn more about the Church and our faith.
We outlined sort of the major markers of the service, and we wrote it and illustrated so that the child would then remain engaged with the liturgy, so that attention of the child would be moving forward towards the altar, not necessarily down at the book. We didn't want them reading about things. We wanted them experiencing it.
To find this and other books like it, you can go to store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
Father Evan is ready for your call, and our lines are open at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Here once again is Father Evan.
I was just listening to that spot about the book for the Divine Liturgy. It's a book that I have myself and my youngest, who's 9, uses Spirit on, as well as the AFR Children's Prayer Book, both of them incredible resources. I often get questions from parents about how to help form their children in faith. And one of the things I just have to say is, look, there are a million different aids and resources to help you, but there's nothing that replaces you in the equation. As a parent of 4 children, I can tell you that my children's life in faith depends to large measure on me and whether or not I'm willing to enter that space with them. I find it important children are in good health, that they can pursue their interests, that they've learned to read and navigate the world as it goes with each passing year. They mature and new responsibilities come on, and I help them learn them. My second child is learning to drive, and I get in the car with her. I took her on the highway for a couple hours the other day, and I want to give her the tools to move and mature and launch into life. We care for their bodies, their minds, their material needs, but what about their souls? Study after study shows that basically children whose parents focus and help them navigate their spiritual lives, and trust me, whether or not they show an overt interest, I think that every child is interested in these questions, especially if we open this conversation from the time they're little, that they have rich, full lives, that they fall in love with the gospel, and they find a way to manifest its tenets in their life. So those are 2 tools. Nothing replaces you, But if you have them and you use them, great things occur in the name of Christ. All right, we're going to go to an anonymous question that came in by email when the show was opening up. And I read this question and it really just kind of knocked me back, and I want to read it to you. Father bless. Dear Father Evan, I've listened to your show since the beginning and learned something new nearly every week. Thank you. Dear listener, thanks for those kind words. There's not many who I think have been with us since the beginning, and I'm glad that you have been, and I'm thankful that you've learned something every time. I'd like to remain anonymous, if that's okay. I'm a 35-year-old mother of some number of kids. I converted independently 13 years ago and met my now husband the same year. The past few years have been extraordinarily difficult, and I started turning to alcohol to cope with a life that I feel is out of my control. I've been struggling with alcoholism. I never thought I would be one of quote-unquote those people, as I come from a long line of alcoholics and just thought I was stronger than this. Anyway, I have finally come to terms with my crumbling relationship with God and faltering relationships in my family. I go to AA via Zoom and have a sponsor now. While they focus on a higher power, it's very quote-unquote spiritual and open-ended, which works for some people as far as getting sober goes. I'm just wondering if you know of any Orthodox resources for addicts/alcoholics, such as particular saints to pray to for intercession or certain prayers to pray. I'm tired of the struggle, and I'm tired of not being able to pray honestly, as you can't really do so well openly as I get life back together. In much humility, I thank you. Well, I have to say, dear Anonymous, thank you. What a powerful question. What an important question. What a question that I just feel that time here with you on it, dear listener, because you're not alone. Every one of them degree is easy, but addiction is another way for saying, you know, so many of us are enslaved. So many of us are addicted to a behavior that is destructive. Yours is alcoholism. And this doesn't classify in some way as less than or but as you write, destroying your relationship with God and family. So it's not something you can ignore. It's not but it tells us to sin, cut it off. For eye causes us to sin. Now, he's not speaking literally here, but he is speaking truthfully. You have to cut off the alcohol. The Lord is or may, or if you enter into this place of hell, quote unquote, intact. So you've picked the fight, and this is a fight that's going to require all of your attention, all of your spiritual, emotional, physical attention. It's going to require new boundaries. And sure, be easy. And you asked about resources within the church. There are a number of them, and I want to share some of those with you. One of the questions you is patron saint. One that is beloved Saint of he is known patron saint for those struggling with drug or alcohol addiction. Saint Ephraim of Neamakri, Neamakri. This is a saint that many believe comes alongside those providing to people with turmoil and alcohol. So check that out, definitely, to ask for intercessions from. The second thing is prayers themselves. There happens to be a whole set of prayers for addiction. The service is known as the Akathist, A-K-A-T-S-T. That's a fancy word for to not sit. It's a prayer service sitting, one's knees to be standing. It's the Agathist of the Theotokos. Theotokos means God-bearer, the inexhaustible cup. The way to purchase that book or that prayer service is to go to the website of St. Paisio's gift shop. So STPAISIUS gift, GIFT shop, SHOP.com. Or there's just a monastery in Arizona, and their gift store, and you're going to look for the prayer service that they have translated and published called the Akathist to the Mother of God, the Inexhaustible. And this is a service that people pray that are addicted to alcohol or drugs. It's prayed by those suffering from addiction or those who are praying for others. I would strongly encourage you to service and even to purchase for yourself the Exhaust. If you Google, that is a wonderful resource. The other thing is, I want to make you aware of the work of Father Meletios Weber. I see our producer has also populated the dialogue box with the same. This book is called Steps of Transformation. An Orthodox priest explores the 12 steps. Archimandrite Meletios Weber knows that alcoholism is rampant in our culture and in families, and Father Meletios approaches the very well-known 12 steps from an Orthodox perspective, and that book is something that you can get on, you can purchase it at the Ancient Faith bookstore, but take a look at that book, and I think you'll find it to be an incredible resource. There are a number of priests throughout the United States that also work closely with those struggling with addiction. One off the top of my head that you may want to reach out to for additional help is Father Tom Sagalakis. Excuse me. Father Tom is a parish priest in Washington State, Holy Apostles, and you can find him online. You just Google his parish, Holy Apostles, Greek Orthodox Church, Washington, and you can connect with him. And he runs a ministry for those with addictions, and he's going to have other additional resources to share with you that I think will be helpful. I hope I've given you enough to start with. I think I have. If you've got a follow-up question, dear listener, feel free to send it in to me. I have no problem answering this question again, and it's a question I don't think you're alone with. Many out there are struggling with this addiction. And there's a number of other resources, but I think these are enough to get started. So thanks for writing in. Thanks for the courage to do so, and God be with you as you in this fight for your own freedom and liberation with God's help. Again, you're listening to Orthodoxy Live here on Ancient Faith Radio. A few minutes left of the program if you'd like to get in at 1-855-237-2346. Another question that's come in at Orthodoxy Live at ancientfaith.com comes from Mark. Mark writes in, Dear Father Evan, I came to Orthodoxy late in life. I have a desire to attend and obtain a master's in divinity. Realistically speaking, is 60 too advanced in age for seminary studies? Thank you. Mark, I think the paradigm and lifespan. Those two things have adjusted dramatically in the last few decades. 100 years ago, 60 would have been late to try anything. Today, many people are active physically and intellectually into their 80s. I've seen my own bishop's 89, but I've seen parish priests, activists, well into their 70s. And in fact, there's a number of priests in our metropolis who came to full-time ministry in their mid-60s. I can think of a couple right off the top of my head who were ordained in their 60s and now serve full-time in very large parishes. And they're active, they're vibrant, they bring a world, of experience. One of them was a urologist, another one of them was a police captain, and they spent decades in those careers and then went to seminary, graduated, were ordained, and now serving. They're both grandfathers, but they're in good health. They want to serve God and the church, and so they're doing it. And they're a wonderful addition to the clergy brotherhood. So from a personal standpoint, I think you've got to take stock. Look, you can run for president in your 70s, and I can't imagine that the priesthood has more demands on its time than the presidency. So certainly you could do this as a 60-year-old man. Now, look, I'm not going to lie to you. The journey into the priesthood is not a one, and you shouldn't go without the blessing of your bishop and a conversation with them. Most of the attendees in seminary are going to be a couple of decades younger than you, but I think you'll be surprised. Many are entering the seminary as a second career in their 40s or so, even 50s. And I even went to school with some that were in their 60s, so that'll be a little bit different. And, what's your family situation? Are you in a situation financially where you can leave work for 3 years and study? Does your parish priest have any ideas? All of those things will factor in. But bottom line is, I think, Mark, you should go. If God's you and you've discerned that call to the priesthood, then what a beautiful way to spend your years serving the church, right? So God bless. Let me know, Mark, if you decide to go. Another question that came in while we're on air here is ask at ancientfaith.com, and it comes from a listener by the name of Mary. Hello, Father. Curious about the difference to six-winged and many-eyed angels mentioned in the Divine Liturgy. Why are they many-eyed? I understand the unity among angels, humans, and God, but many-eyed evokes less than a beautiful spirit. Are they always represented in the fans that are used in the procession? Thank you. Your podcasts and call-ins are so informative, Mary. Well, it looks like, Mary, you're actually asking two questions. The first is reference to this phrase, six-winged and many-eyed angels. All right. The angels. Angels, the word angel means messenger. So the word itself does not reference simply the bodiless host, but it can represent St. John the Baptist was a messenger, the prophets were a messenger, but in Greek we also call it asomatos, the bodiless. So we have to remember the angel body. They don't have arms, they don't have eyes, they don't have ears, they don't have noses and mouths and legs and feet and hands. So this is figurative language. What eye? And, two pairs of eyes we see a lot, four, we see everything. So the idea is that these six-winged and many-eyed angels can see everything. They apprehend and are watchful. And more wings, than the quicker, the faster they execute the will of God. Just think of this. These angels are sleepless. They're Armatas, no body. They don't get tired. They're constantly watching, just as the opposite demonic powers do. And having many wings, they are represented on the fans that are used during the procession, which is a liturgical and ceremonial device. So thanks for the question, Mary. We're going to go back out to the phones. Neil, you're welcome to Orthodoxy Live.
Hi, Father Evan. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. Where are you calling from?
From Iowa.
Wonderful. Nice to have you on the program. My brother, younger, went to school at Cornell College in Iowa.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No way.
Is it close to you? Oh, really? What's the name of the town again?
Yeah, Mount Vernon. That's where both of my parents worked when I was growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I visited him, this is back in the 80s, I think there was only one stop like that. It's not a town.
Oh, no, it's tiny.
Yeah, but
people. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful college.
Yes, it is.
Well, Neil, welcome to the program. Tell me your question.
Yes. I was born and raised Protestant.
Yeah.
And have found myself journeying toward Orthodoxy.
Uh-huh.
And not dissimilar from your first caller. Quite similar situation, actually. My wife is more skeptical.
Sure.
And however, we've had some really good conversations lately, and I was hoping, and she has agreed to engaging more in like a unified prayer life. That I was hoping that we could engage in some more of the Orthodox prayers together.
Sure.
And so I was hoping for your guidance on that.
Okay.
And any other advice that you might have for me.
Yeah, on prayer?
On prayer and just the process in general.
Neil, so here's I'm going to give you a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you to do something. I hope you don't mind. Your question is an important one, and it's one I don't want to just sort of give you an answer and send you on your way.
You have 2 minutes left in your...
Yeah. I want you to do, are you okay with this? Would you be willing to call back in next Sunday? And our producer will going to call back in, and you can just call right at 6, and we'll take your call first. But while I have you on air, I want to say at least a little bit. First of all, thank God that your wife is open to beginning a life of prayer with you. And whether you did this before or not, what a beautiful development to be praying together is wonderful. And of course, to keep your own private prayer at the same time. And there are so many things I want to say to you. One of them being, you're one of the reasons I wrote the book is because I've often been asked questions about the theology of the church and her dogmatic positions. And, after I get through them, people start to say things like, but I want to be able to pray, or I'm trying to build a life of charity, or I don't know how to fast. These basic spiritual disciplines that Christ talks about, people don't know how to do. And so the book that I wrote that'll be out in a month, is this very question, how to set up a life of prayer, how to do this, what does it look like? Where do I do it? What do I say when I'm saying my prayers? Very quick and dirty, I would say to you that utilizing an Orthodox prayer book is extremely beneficial, but okay, great. Which one did you purchase?
I actually got the Hear Me one.
Okay.
I think it was from Ancient Faith. It's for younger adults, but it seems my wife is very kind of straight and to the point, and I'm much more philosophical. So I felt like that might be better for her.
Yeah. So that sounds great. Here's what I want to do. You're probably going to get that book in time for your call next week. When you call, you and I are going to go through that book a little bit, and we're gonna pick out practically what you're going to do. I'm gonna share some very practical insights onto how to set that up, what to do with your wife, how to make that environment edifying and, if you will, safe and comfortable for her to participate in, and how to build that. Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay, Neil?
That'd be wonderful.
Okay, so we'll chat next week, and I look forward to it. You're going to open up the program with me, all right?
All right, sounds great.
Okay, Neil, talk to you in a few days.
Yeah, thanks, Father Evan.
Bye-bye. Well, I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to Neil's question. It's just too important a question for me to cover topically, and I think, Neil, you're in a position many people are in, whether you're journeying into Orthodoxy or not, how to build a prayer life, and how to build a prayer life with one's spouse, with one's children. And so I want to take some time, Neil, and go over that. I want to thank all of you for listening tonight and joining us live. It's always an honor and a privilege to be your host. And this is your live call-in show about the Orthodox faith, her teachings, and her traditions. Of course, if you missed any, you can listen to it as a podcast or past shows. Please tell people about us. If you haven't written a review, please do. When you do, it shares the work of Ancient Faith Radio with others and expands the reach of the gospel. How important is that? It's a simple thing you can do to help others learn about Jesus Christ. Want you to also think about Mexico, as I mentioned in the opening, and how you can support them as well. We'll be back next week. Tune in then. Neil, to talking to you then. For Ancient Faith Radio, this is Father Evan. Good night and God bless.
The Second Liturgy, Encountering Christ at the Table of the Poor.
The second podcast. In a recent episode about this project, as part of his research, Orthodox Christians in North America perspectives on the poor, and I'd expect respondents reported participation in the Divine Liturgy, personal conscience, examples from the lives of the saints,